You know, when I was reading this new book, I was reminded of my life in 1993, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. Actually, it was 1989, and I want to talk to you about distractions because I was kind of front row seat of watching distractions make or break certain people. And this happened to me when I moved from San Diego to MIT when I was 18 years old to study engineering. And I went there and I was surrounded with some of the smartest people in the world, and I moved into a fraternity house where 50 guys were living in this place, average age 20, max age 22. And I had so many distractions, and yet, you know, half a click down the road, I had the greatest technology, you know, institute in the world where I was there to work for 4 years, and that was going to change the course of my life. And Nir, I saw guys come in that could not handle the distraction. And it crushed me. I saw a guy 6 months later, he was back home as a bike messenger. And this is a guy that
got into MIT.
Got into MIT. I saw some guys go on to become doctors, start some very famous companies, and other guys went back home and worked at restaurants because they couldn't handle the distraction. And again, in the fraternity house, there was always someone that wanted to play pool, play foosball. There was beer to drink. There were parties. There were girls coming over.
And this was 93.
Yeah, well, this is actually, I got there in 89.
89, yeah. Okay, so this was before Facebook. This was before the iPhone. This was before all the things that people think are distracting us, as if distraction is something new. I think you have a great point here. Distraction is definitely nothing new. It's been a struggle that people have tried to overcome since the times of Plato. Plato literally talked about krasia, this tendency that we all have to do things against our better interest 2,500 years ago. And so imagine how much more distracting the world is today, where we have these devices that a lot of people complain are so distracting to us.
Yeah, so I can't wait to get into this stuff. I mean, for me, I ended up finding my own IP to get me through there in 4 years, and it usually involved leaving the fraternity, and I would go to this 24-hour-a-day library called Hayden. Anybody from MIT watching will know that place, and I would be in the basement there till 4 in the morning, and I would come up with these mind games to keep me focused. And during finals week, oh my God, I mean, I used to like black out the windows of my room. I used to put like things on the wall, like saying like, how bad do you want it? And like calling myself weak and like all this stuff. And it was a mental game. And so I always tell people, you know, the success I had at MIT wasn't because I was the smartest. I actually wasn't one of the smartest people there, but I found a way to not be distracted.
Absolutely. I mean, this is why I call being Indistractable the skill of the century. That the power to do whatever it is you say you're going to do, to live with personal integrity, is the skill of the century. I mean, that is a superpower in my book.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful, and that's why I think this is really important. Also, some other things really stuck out to me, and we will get into this later, but you said in the book and also in interviews, all behavior is the desire to escape discomfort. And so time management becomes pain management.
Right.
And honestly, Nir, I had to think about that for a day before it really hit me. But it's weird because people expected maybe the second book to be a lot about kind of like digital devices and products. And I know there's carryover, but you're talking about basic human functionality.
Right.
It's been around for thousands of years.
Right. And this is, I think, a really important concept for everyone to understand, that when we try and answer Plato's question of why do we do things against our better judgment, I mean, this is an age-old question. When we know what to do, why don't we just do it? And particularly in today's age where we have the world's information at our fingertips, we don't have the excuse of not knowing what to do anymore. Who doesn't know basically how to lose weight? Okay, maybe the specifics, but we basically know that chocolate cake is not as healthy as a healthy salad. Who doesn't know that? Who doesn't know that if you want to have better relationships with people, you have to be fully present with them? Who doesn't know that if you want to do better at your job, you have to do the work, especially the hard stuff that other people don't want to do? We know these things. So there's no excuse anymore to say, well, I just didn't know how. Google is right there for anyone to use. What we're lacking is the ability to follow through. We're lacking the ability to avoid distraction. Getting ahead in life is not just about doing the right things. It's about avoiding not doing the wrong things. And that's what becoming Indistractable is all about. It's about whatever it is that you say is important to you in your life, how do you make sure you do those things? So to start answering these questions, I'm a big definitions guy. I think words are very, very important. So let's start with defining what we mean by distraction. So the best way to understand what distraction is to understand what it is not. So the opposite of distraction is not focus. The opposite of distraction, if you look at the etymology of the word, the opposite of distraction is traction. They both come from the same Latin root, meaning trahare, which means to pull. So, and they both end in the same 6 letters. action and distraction, traction and distraction both end in A-C-T-I-O-N. That spells action. So traction is any action that pulls you towards what you want to do, things that you do with intent. The opposite of traction is distraction, anything that pulls you away from something that you didn't plan to do, or that you plan to do, something that you are not doing with intent. Okay. So this is super important for two reasons. One, I think it frees us from this moral hierarchy that what you do with your time, that's frivolous. But what I do with my time, that's okay, right? So me watching football, that's all right, but you playing Candy Crush, not okay. I argue, no, anything that you want to do with intent, that is according to your values, is fine. They're both pastimes, there's nothing wrong with them. And you see this a lot with the younger generations, that older folks think that younger kids playing video games or whatever they're doing somehow is frivolous and silly. No, I think if you plan your time and you do what you say you're going to do, anything can be traction. And just like anything can become traction if you plan for it, anything can become distraction as well. So for example, I work with a lot of folks who have this problem of when they get to work, they say they're going to do something. They say they're going to work on that big project. They're going to stop procrastinating and do that thing that they've been planning to do right after they check email, right after they scroll that Slack channel, right after they do that quick thing that they have to talk with a colleague real quick. And so 30, 45 minutes later, they still haven't started to do the thing they plan to do.
Right, and the other thing is technically work.
Exactly.
But it's not the thing they need to do.
I call it pseudo work.
Right,
it
is pseudo work.
I kind of need to check email, right? I kind of need to do that stuff. But if I plan to do something else at that time, it is just as much of a distraction. So anything can become a distraction as well. And the reason this is so pernicious is that we are slaves now to the urgent at the sacrifice of the important when we do that. And in today's age where technology is so pervasive and so persuasive, I mean, it is designed to be persuasive, and we want it to be persuasive, we want products to be engaging, then it's easier than ever to get distracted.
Thanks to your first book.
Partially thanks to my first book.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So we've got traction, we've got distraction.
Right.
Now, back to your question around these triggers, we have two things that move us towards traction and distraction. We have what's called an external trigger or an internal trigger. External trigger is what kind of everybody blames on distraction, right? It's the pings, the dings, the rings, anything in your environment that prompts you towards traction or distraction. Now, they're not inherently bad. These tools are not somehow evil. If a notification on your phone says, hey, it's time to wake up and hit the gym, or it's time to go to that meeting, or it's time to do the thing you plan to do, it's moving you towards traction. But if you get a notification on your phone while you're with somebody that you plan to spend time with, in my case, it was my daughter. And one day I got this notification while I'm spending time with my daughter and I'm checking my phone as opposed to being fully present with her. That was moving me towards distraction. So those are the external triggers, but it turns out, even though we love to blame those things, we think that that is the root cause of the problem. In fact, the psychology of distraction goes much, much deeper. That most distraction, it turns out, is not spurred by the external triggers at all. Most distraction does not start outside of us, but rather starts from within. That the root cause of why we become distracted is because we feel these internal triggers, these uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape. So if we're going to answer Plato's question of why do we get distracted, why do we do things against our better judgment, we have to start one layer deeper with first principles of why do we do anything? What's the nature of human motivation? And when you think about it, most people will tell you some version of carrots and sticks, that it's about the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. This is Freud's pleasure principle.
Yeah.
But neurologically speaking, that's not true. That in fact, we do not do things in the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. That neurologically speaking, we only do things for one reason, and that is to avoid discomfort. Physiologically, we know this is true. If you go outside and it's cold, that's not comfortable, what do? You put on a coat. And when you go back inside, now it's too hot, that's not comfortable, you take it off. If you're hungry, you feel hunger pangs, you eat. And when you're stuffed, oh, that doesn't feel good, you stop eating. So physiologically, we feel this all the time. This is called the homeostatic response. The same rules apply with psychological sensations, not just with physiological sensations. So when you're feeling lonely, check Facebook. When you're uncertain, you Google. When you're bored, check the news, check sports scores, check Reddit, Pinterest, whatever. All of these things cater to these uncomfortable sensations. So that means if all human behavior is spurred by a desire to escape discomfort, that means, as you said, time management is pain management. And so this is why it is the most important first step, that with all the ways you can, life hack yourself and all of the guru's technique du jour, fundamentally, if we don't deal with this fact that we are trying to escape an uncomfortable sensation when we become distracted. If we don't understand it and learn new methods to cope with that discomfort, we're always going to be distracted by one thing or another.